Okay, take two on reviewing Angus versus Kale. Amp first to 5. They're taken from down in Tulsa here. Was watching through part of this, just had to start over. So we're just going to kind of burn through a little bit of this early stuff. But let's get going here. So one of the things I kind of want to talk about is setting up a fight, right? I know Raven just kind of talked about that in a video he dropped earlier. If you're not following Professor Raven, please go do so. He's got some really good content. Not just because I'm on there, but just because he breaks things down in a rather understandable way, so I'd recommend going to do that. One of the things we want to talk about here is this fighting style that Kale and Angus seem to demonstrate. Seems like, especially for Angus, it is intended to be that the first attack is what is going to hit pretty much each time, right? Everything is intended to be, or seems intended to be, a kill shot, right? Or at least a solid hit. And there he punishes Kale for reaching, doing kind of the classic shoulder and then under, board. But the problem is, because of the way that Kale is squaring his shoulders up, he's presenting both his shoulders as a target. And you can kind of see it when he frames up here. So when they start the fight here, we'll see. Okay, look right there. So they're both rather square, but the difference here is that Angus is projecting his guard, projecting his weapons out further, whereas Kale is couching everything to him and has his guard high to protect that shoulder. But he's also even dipping his sword side shoulder down a little bit. And he's just got this very linear stance in comparison to Angus's wider stance. Now, he does a good job there of playing patient and taking advantage, but I don't think through this video we'll see him open the fight very much. What we're going to see is a lot of this where Angus is starting the fight off, throwing deep and throwing crosses, throwing under the board, and then just getting hit a couple times when he overreaches, but mostly him kind of overcrowding Kale. Talking, they frame up into stance, and again, so we've got this kind of projected forward stance from Angus. He's taller, he's a little high, he's definitely got the height and reach advantage here, so it makes sense that he's going to be the one to open the fight. But what he's doing a lot of the time is really abusing the benefit of his range, and even these little like distance fakes he does here with his feet, where he slides his foot back and pops his hip up. That is a great opportunity for Kale to try and get in there and punish him for a habit that's going to put him out of position, right? Let me wind this back real quick here. So what we end up seeing is where he's fairly stable, This is a pretty safe place for him to be. He's got his punch forward pretty far, his sword's back. There's a lot of open right here that if Kale, I think, were more willing to be the one to open the fight, to try and throw the shot, the first shot to open it, he'd have some success. But due to the way that they're standing, what I can imagine is generally that Kale probably gets hit from over top when he throws first, which is why we have this sunken stance, why his shield and his sword are both aimed upward. To cover that. But what happens here is Angus shifts his weight up, but instead of just extending his legs, he throws his hips back and still has his weight forward. So what we've got is this very heavy force leaning out. He doesn't, all his weight is back here, he can't even touch his heels down. And all he can do is go forward, right? All he can do is go forward now. That's it. So this is a great opportunity for Angus to go ahead, or for Kale to go ahead and step in and punish, right? And again, you see where Angus is reaching. He keeps throwing for that sword side hand. And it looks like it is very much meant to be, whatever his first shot is the one that's meant to kill. And he reaches further and further. Now, he still gets away with this here, and is staying outside of Kale's effective range a little better. He's tagging at the shield. He's really pulling and has this nice little combo there, throwing outside and then around and in, which is good stuff. He's really missing an opportunity, though, to really bring his lateral movement that he's demonstrating elsewhere to bear. And again, so we've got a high cross, outside, high cross, right? And Kale is getting, I don't know if he's getting fully out of position. Yeah, he's just dumping for the dark side and then getting caught with that scoop. That's the thing. If you're always throwing the same shot, right, and you're not doing any sort of setup and it's not working, there's nothing you can really do. You're going to die to the same thing over and over again. And that's that outside scoop to the inside for a third time right there. Angus has found something that's working, and he doesn't even need to necessarily switch it up too much. That was good there, that outside stab. So this is a great way to start to open a fight or to change up a fight, is by looking at what you've done previously, what has worked and what hasn't, and building off of that. Let me wind this back a little bit here. So he's coming from guard position, stabs out. Now this is a great opportunity for Kale to try and get his hand in the way, but he's still trying to block the shield, and what that leads to is that flying around all over the place. And they're both trading, just trying to swing for whatever they can find open. Any more patience on either of these guys' parts would have likely led to victory. So the willingness for your shot, your first shot, to not be, I don't mean to stop there, to not be the one that hits, to not be the one that kills, to open a fight without it having to be the same expected kill shot, right, is monumentally important, because as you go along, you have to start gathering more information from your opponent. For Kale, Angus showed him that he wants to do that safe hit to the outside, scoop, and cross inside. And each time, what did he do? He starts trying to block with his shield when it's out of position. So let's scroll up to this real quick. So we've got here, and I'm pretty sure this is, like across. This is the one where he starts to do this. So he goes into the leg, smacks the shield a bit, and then throws the outside scoop here. Bop, bop. Yep. And so what he's doing as well is he's hitting the outside of the shield, scooping with the inside edge of his shield, and then crossing to that inside. And as soon as you realize that as well, you notice he goes from a smaller punch where he has to reach a little bit more and he's a little more exposed to this bigger punch here. Now, I'm not usually a fan of swapping up gear in the middle of a 1st to 5 or 1st to 10, just because the goal is to get people to adapt and see what your stuff is. But honestly, for the strategy that he chose, this is not a bad option. What I would really love to see from Kale here is to really work on getting his hand involved in the blocking process, because here again, he goes to the immediate dark side, gets scooped, and instead of trying to block with his hand, his sword hand, he tries to block with his shield and ends up getting this, double high cross to the side. Pop, and right there. Right? And because his hand is so high and so out of the way, there's nothing that he can do. Right? Because he's chasing that sword back and forth. If instead he's willing to block with his sword hand, so when Angus throws this aside, he can have it down here in the way and then punish Angus, hitting him in the arm and taking that W. I think he's going to really start seeing some solid results here. So a lot of this was, the main things I would see from here is Kale not being willing to open a fight at all, only willing to try and throw counter as like a dark side, and Angus is just too fast or too far away for that to work half the time. And really, Kale's not setting any of this up or stepping with it. During all of that, he's rocking back and forth. His feet don't move. He takes, I'd say, 3-4 steps this entire fight, this last fight here. Right, so let's count him off real quick, just to, I guess, hammer home a point. So this is the fight before it. Or no, this is the... Okay, yeah, this is the right fight. So let's get back here. Okay. So they frame up. Foot hasn't moved. Front foot hasn't moved. He's done a little bit of a readjustment. We've got 1 step, 2 step. He swaps feet, so let's say 3. And then, let's be generous and say 4. He hardly moves during any of that. And especially during this exchange right here, his foot isn't moving. He's just rocking back and forth, which you can't defend at all with that. So really what we need to see here from both of these guys is more lateral movement that makes sense and not just stopping and standing in the pocket, which I know is a thing that I'm guilty of doing. But I feel a little more confident when I'm doing. Mine's a deliberate choice a lot of the time rather than a result of being stuck. Now, sometimes it is being stuck. That's not the point here, but Angus has shown us that he has good lateral movement. If he would engage that more, not just to circle around the opponent and then just step in and fight from one position, but to throw these shots as he's moving, I really think he'd see a much greater benefit. Kale, buddy, you really got to get you got to be willing to move during this, and you have to be willing to start trying to open fights, right? The reason that Angus throws what he does, just based on what I can see from you guys, and it looks like you have some context here, some understanding of each other, you fought before. The reason that he looks like he throws what he does is because he knows how you're going to respond or where you're going to be open. Now, you're staying home, you're keeping your guard in position a lot of the time, which is working out for you just long enough for Angus to get a setup, and then you don't seem to have an answer. So really focus up on getting your feet moving just to control the range between the two of you so that Angus can't walk in and just decide to set up whatever he wants. And getting your sword hand involved in blocking. You do that, I think you're really going to start to see some major benefits. So that has been my review, and hope you all can do something with that. Thanks for watching.